Hi, Dr. Sharma. Good afternoon. My name is Isha, and I'm a high school student interested in being a veterinarian. I'm so excited to welcome you to the interview series on the careers of veterinarians. Thank you so much for joining us. Let me
Yeah,
start
thanks
with
for
an
having me.
introduction of our speaker. Our speaker today is Dr. Diya Sharma. Dr. Sharma is a veterinary clinical pathologist in Reno, Nevada, who works for Charles River Laboratories, which is a contract research organization that conducts preclinical safety and efficacy trials in animal models for various pharmaceuticals and biotech companies. Dr. Sharma is originally from Canada and obtained her DVM degree at the Ontario Veterinary College, the University of Guelph, in 2012. Dr. Sharma has a diverse veterinary career, placing her in various settings such as small animal clinical practice, research and veterinary epidemiology, and a clinical specialty residency, all of which culminated in a career in clinical pathology. In her spare time, she enjoys being active in the outdoors with her husband and adorable Augie dog, which is a mix between a Corgi and an Aussie, and singing. Dr. Sharma currently sings with a local cover band for fun. With this introduction, let me extend a warm welcome and thank you to Dr. Sharma for chatting with me today.
Thank you, Isha, for that nice introduction. My name is Dr. Sharma, and I'm going to be giving a little interview with Isha here, and I am very happy to be here. So I'm going to just share my screen right now. There we go. All right. Isha, does that look all right? Or here, let's do the swap presenter mode. Does that look okay?
That's great.
Perfect. Okay, so that's me.
Yeah, so first, could you tell us about the various types of work that you've done? And
Yeah,
feel free to, use all your slides.
yeah. So, as mentioned already, I am a veterinary clinical pathologist, and just as a little background of what that is, so with pathology, that is the study of disease at the heart of it, essentially. And so what a clinical pathologist is a specialist who is very versed in diagnostic investigation and interpretation. You might hear some people say that they are a specialist within laboratory medicine. And so our goal as a clinical pathologist is to collect data from various types of samples in a living patient or animal, so such as blood, body fluids, and to try and run those samples on analyzer machines or evaluate those under the microscope to try and figure out what is wrong with the animal or patient. So it's a lot of detective work. Some of the samples that I receive and look at, like I mentioned, body fluid from various body cavities, what we call fine needle aspirate biopsies, where you take a little needle and you insert it into some sort of mass or lump or bump, and you suck out some cells and look at it under a microscope to hopefully tell you what kind of disease process is happening here. So I don't know if all of you know of this TV show called House MD, but if it helps put it into perspective a little bit, I guess you could consider a clinical pathologist like House from that show. Just the patient is an animal. Now, taking that more specifically into the context of my specific work I do with Charles River Labs, I'm a clinical pathologist in the subspecialty of toxicologic pathology. So what I do is apply those clinical pathology skills that we just talked about in the context of preclinical safety and efficacy studies evaluating various pharmaceuticals in animal models with the goal of looking for any signs of toxicity, as well as to check, is the drug working? Is it doing what is it supposed to do? And so our clients are actually not owners in in a clinical practice. They're not the pet owner. Our clients are actually pharmaceutical and biotech companies and also veterinarians who are working in those sectors as well. And so my job in this context is to review and interpret laboratory data from lab animal species. So Common species we have in our studies are rats and also non-human primates at the Reno facility. They're known for non-human primate work. And so I look for evidence of toxicity in various organ systems or body systems. And this is really important because we don't want to treat humans or give humans medicines that are either unsafe or are ineffective, or they don't work. So the preclinical safety testing phase of the drug development is where veterinary clinical pathologists hang out, and they're trying to make sure the drug is looking safe in animal models before we advance it to human use. And there are very strict regulations and oversight of the studies that we conduct, and animal welfare is held to the highest of standards. It's very heavily regulated. So we take animal treatment very seriously, and we make sure that they are treated well, have good medical treatment if needed, and housing, and have a whole care system. Just they have better health care than humans, really, to be honest. So yeah, so that's kind of what I do in a very in a different context from a traditional clinical pathologist.
Yeah, thank you so much for sharing that. That was very interesting, and I learned a lot. Could you tell us about your education and training that prepared you for this career, how it helped you, what were the prerequisites, where did you study, and if you had any influential mentors?
Yes, I can cover most of those. And so just with my background and training for you guys to get a sense. So I am originally Canadian, as Isha had mentioned earlier. And so I did my undergrad degree and training at the University of Guelph in Canada. It's in a town called Guelph, which is about an hour southwest of Toronto, if that helps geographically. And so I completed just a general biological sciences degree, a 3-year degree. And then I was fortunate enough to be accepted to the Ontario Veterinary College for my DVM degree training. And that too was also at the University of Guelph. There are, at the respective universities you're applying to, they should list prerequisite courses that you need to complete, and of course have good grades in them to be admitted to that program. So I followed the guidelines for that DVM degree listed at the University of Guelph, and met those. I'll talk about this a little bit later, but essentially it's really good to have a lot of diverse experience with animals and different aspects of the veterinary profession prior to you applying to a given veterinary school. And so that is what I did. I volunteered and then eventually worked at a small animal clinic. I dabbled in some research to do with poultry and food safety. I, shadowed an equine veterinarian, worked on a dairy farm for a couple of summers. So just as much diversity, but I'll get to that later. So I completed my DVM in 2012. And then I went and actually practiced a little bit in small animal practice for a year, and then actually decided I wanted more training, specialized training. And so I applied and was matched to an rotating internship program at Washington State University in the little old town of Pullman, so the home of the Cougs, if you've heard of that. So go Cougs. So I completed my small animal rotating internship there, where I trained or worked and trained under the guidance of various specialists, emergency critical care, cardiology, surgery, you name it. So it was a really good and intense experience for improving the way I practiced. And then also a lot of people like to use that as a stepping stone for various residencies. So after that internship, I actually went out again and practice a bit more, but then decided I wanted to pursue a Master's of Preventive Veterinary Medicine degree. So that's called an MPVM degree at UC Davis. And that is a very specialized or unique post-DVM degree in veterinary epidemiology. So it's a 1 to 2 year long master's program in veterinary epidemiology, essentially. So I did that. And then after that, I went on to my residency in clinical pathology at the University of Wisconsin-Madison. And I knew I wanted to pursue clinical pathology at the time I was doing my master's at Davis. And so that kind of helped prepare me for that residency as well. Just, I did some research there, and that's very important for the type of residency I was doing, and, made connections with clinical pathologists at UC Davis. So it was all very good experience to help transition me for a residency and essentially be accepted to that program. So I did that 3-year-long residency at the University of Wisconsin. And then I went straight from Wisconsin to Reno, Nevada, to work for Charles River in toxicologic pathology, doing what I already described I was doing. And then I also got boarded in 2021, actually, in veterinary clinical pathology. So you have to take some specialty board exams, pretty rigorous. Glad it's done with. And so, yeah, so I'm a boarded specialist now, and I'm working in Charles River. I had mentioned already that in between some of these ventures, I did practice as a small animal veterinarian. And so I did do both small animal emergency practice as well as general practice. And I, some of that was in Canada initially, and some of that was in the San Francisco Bay Area when I was living out there. And while I really loved clinical practice and working with animals directly and helping people, helping owners, I did discover personally that my passion stemmed mostly from the diagnostic investigation of what was going on with the animal or the patient, what was wrong with the patient. And so I was very analytical, and I liked trying to figure it out and figure out, what disease process, what is wrong with the patient. And of course, you use that information to try and treat the animal. But my main passion was really trying to figure it out and kind of going above and beyond. So that is kind of where my interest in clinical pathology came from, doing that, being that specialist of diagnostic investigation. And so why I ultimately, through my long journey, made it over to veterinary clinical pathology and where I am today.
Yeah, thank you so much for sharing this. This was very helpful. I was wondering now if you could tell us about how your career evolved over time, including skills and experience you learned during your fascinating journey, the best career decision you made, any setbacks that turned out to be an advantage, and any considerations as you made different choices during your career.
Sure. So just like that little a little picture up in the top right there, it is definitely an evolution, a different process there. And so prior to vet school, as I was mentioning earlier, once I knew I really wanted to pursue veterinary medicine, I first started shadowing at my local small animal clinic in my hometown, and they saw, I guess, how good of a worker I was and my interest. And eventually, when a position opened up, I was hired as an employee vet assistant there. So that was, early exposure to clinical practice for me. Found that pretty helpful. And then I also shadowed an equine medicine veterinarian for 2 summers, I believe, leading up to my vet school applications. And that was a really cool experience. Even though personally I knew that I would likely not pursue equine medicine. I mean, I like horses. Who doesn't like horses? But just, I didn't see myself there. But it was a very good learning experience for me to see a different side of veterinary medicine and what the different issues are for the equine world. And I had a lot of fun too. And then I also volunteered on a dairy farm that was not too far from where I lived for 2 summers. And that was a really good experience because I got to see firsthand how animal production works and some of the issues and the challenges that the farmers face, for which large animal veterinarians or food animal veterinarians would need to be cognizant of. So it was a good learning experience, and also it was fun too. I got to play with calves and feed them sometimes, so that was fun. And then I also was a research assistant for 1 summer for the National Research Council of Canada, where the particular program I was helping with focused on poultry food security. So looking at Salmonella and Campylobacter infection or carriage in the chickens, and trying to reduce or mitigate that for the purpose of food security for people. During vet school, so all those experiences really helped me get a better understanding of the vet field, as well as improve my experience and resume, I think, for vet school applications. And thankfully, I was accepted to vet school. And during vet school, I had various interests. Actually, I had thought about specialty medicine or specialty practice part way through vet school, had an interest in internal medicine and emergency and critical care. And actually initially thought I would try and pursue those specialty residencies. And then I also really liked veterinary parasitology. I have a passion for everything weird and wonderful, and I guess not too far to think about, for a clinical pathologist to like parasitology. So yeah, and in vet school, I was part of committees, clubs, student clubs and committees within those various areas of interest of mine to help, again, increase exposure to those, as well as improve potentially my candidacy for, residencies and those things. And then I also worked on as a veterinary care assistant at the NRC lab animal facility a summer during vet school, and that also directly helped me in the line of work that I do today, even though I might not have known it back then. But I deal with lab animals and looking at their samples now, so knowing how lab animals are housed, their husbandry needs, medical issues that come up, in hindsight, that was very helpful for the career that I am in now. I did an internship after vet school, as I mentioned. That was a very challenging time. It's a very rigorous training, kind of on-the-job training, but you do learn a lot and you are exposed to different aspects of veterinary medicine. And for me, I have bolded here, it was one of the best decisions I made to pursue an internship. Because that is where I think I really solidified my love and interest for clinical pathology. I think it was at the end of my internship, I had decided that I really want to become a clinical pathologist. I dealt with the pathology team over there at my internship place, and I really liked it. And then I did my master's of preventive veterinary medicine degree after my internship. And again, bolded here, that was one of the best decisions because that really helped me, I think, for obtaining my specialty residency, as well as understanding proper or appropriate research conduct. And in a residency, most residencies expect you to conduct research with your mentors, of course, but my master's degree really helped me understand how to conduct solid or good quality research, how to understand reading scientific papers for content. And just because it's in a journal doesn't necessarily mean that it's a good quality article. And so it was very helpful for my residency in general. And then I landed in my residency in clinical pathology, which is the ultimate goal. Yes, so I made it. And it's interesting. I initially thought I would pursue a position in private diagnostics, so like working as a clinical pathologist for a diagnostic lab like IDEX or Antech, if you've ever heard of these big private corporate diagnostic labs. Those are the labs where, for instance, your family veterinarian would send samples to be evaluated by pathologists to help figure out what's going on. So on the diagnostics level, private diagnostic level. So I thought I would do that, but then I come to learn more about the field of toxicologic pathology and thought it would be really awesome to pursue that and make a wider impact on society as a whole with my ClinPath experience and training. So that's where I landed.
Yeah, that was an amazing journey. That was really great. I learned a lot. May I ask, what are some of the most rewarding aspects of your career?
There are several, and they all actually relate to different aspects of being a veterinarian. So that is the key take-home message, that being a veterinarian really opens up a lot of doors and opportunities for you. There's clinical practice, of course, which is very helpful and meaningful to society, but there's so much more, as I hope you're coming to understand through this presentation. So there's a lot of opportunities. And so for me, personally, some of the rewarding things that I had just being a vet in general is that diversity in the roles and opportunities you have to better society. And you're not just boxed in or pigeonholed in one facet of the profession. And you can help animals and people in different ways, whether it's you're working for a clinic, whether it's you're working for the government in food security and safety or public health issues, because a lot of public health issues do have animal ties, or there's zoonotic disease or something, or doing what I do as a pathologist in toxicologic pathology, very diverse opportunities. Specifically the rewards of being a veterinary clinical pathologist, in my case, I feel like it's very rewarding for me to be a mystery solver. It's almost like a detective. And so I get to try and determine fundamentally what's wrong at the heart of it, what's wrong with an animal. And I find that really fascinating. It not only is just fascinating, but it will help guide appropriate treatment for animals for their various medical conditions, which leads to happy vets, happy owners, happy animals. So I really enjoy that my role in this elaborate web of connectivity is the diagnostic investigation. And then just, I guess I'm really academic and I find a lot of science fascinating. And so clinical pathology requires a deep understanding of the pathophysiology of diseases and the mechanisms of disease, even at the cellular and molecular level. So that's a lot of information, and but it's really fascinating. You get to learn how bodies work at the fundamental level and where things can go wrong and why things go wrong. And then rewarding aspects specifically as a clinical pathologist in toxicologic pathology. Kind of I mentioned before, I have an ability to make a widespread positive impact in society by helping investigate the safety and efficacy of various pharmaceuticals and medical technology that it will help save human and animal lives. So this is cutting edge life-saving research for both human use and animal or veterinary use. And so that makes, I take a lot of pride in that, and that feels really good to contribute in that fashion with the skill sets I have. And then also it keeps it kind of interesting where you look at samples or evaluate samples from different animals, lab animals. So not just like cats and dogs, domestic species, but you get a breadth of knowledge and exposure to different species like non-human primates, rats, mini pigs. They're used for certain studies, other animals. So never a dull moment.
Yeah, that is amazing. Thank you for sharing that with me. Could you tell us a little bit about how you believe the profession has changed during the span of your career and how you and other successful vets have adapted to this?
And so I think the profession has changed in the sense that I think it's for the better that there is increasing exposure and need for different roles of veterinarians in society, and it's not just clinical practice. I mean, clinical practice is great and all, but there can be more to it, and people understand that more. There's more positions in these diverse roles being created or being recognized, and so that's a really good thing. I have been removed for a little bit from the clinical practice world, but my impression is that within small animal clinical practice, there has been an increasing movement towards corporatization of veterinary clinics, creating chains like if you've heard of VCA clinics or called something else, but it's like a corporatization of the clinics. And I am not sure of whether that's entirely beneficial or not. To say maybe somebody else might be able to comment more on that, but just that you kind of lose some autonomy in the clinic. It's not just maybe like that, local neighborhood clinic that's providing a certain level of service or care. It's kind of like, the decision making and management is really run by a higher level. And so that could be good, but it might provide less flexibility for how a clinic is managed and its employees. So within specializing within veterinary medicine, I have noticed that obtaining specialty residencies has become increasingly competitive for veterinary applicants. And so you do a residency after your vet school, but it's very competitive. And nowadays, my observation is that many residency programs either prefer or mandate that a specialty internship be completed before you obtain a residency. And so in my case, if you remember back, I did do a rotating small internship, and that was very helpful. And a lot of people do use that as a stepping stone for obtaining a residency. However, what I'm saying is, in addition to that, now it seems like a lot of institutes like an additional specialty internship, like an internship in clinical pathology to get a clinical pathology residency, or an internship in surgery to get a surgery residency, things like that. So I think it's just becoming more competitive. So people are starting to want more internships. And then just some changes within the clinical pathology world. There seems to be a movement towards digitization of slides that we look at, the microscope slides, which is really cool. So that means that there can be whole slide scanners that are scanning the images from the microscope slide and then uploading it to a computer server, and then us pathologists can log on and look at the slide remotely. So that's a really cool thing. So you could technically evaluate slides from anywhere. So might allow for some flexibility with your, working schedule. And then also there's a movement for AI, or artificial intelligence technology, to start looking at pathology slides as well, which is pretty cool. Help maybe identify patterns of disease quicker, or help the pathologist identify certain diseases faster. So it's meant to be a tool. It's not going to replace a pathologist. So that's good for job security. But it's kind of exciting to think about where that is going in the pathology discipline, to help for maybe like faster, better evaluations, and also improve, work-life balance. And so those were the answers to those earlier questions. Thank you very much. And I'll remove the sharing mode and turn it back to Isha.
Yeah, that was very interesting. I learned so much from your presentation, and I was wondering if you could tell us about what high school and pre-vet students could do to prepare to become a vet.
Yeah, and that's a great question. And maybe you have an idea or two from the presentation I just gave, but I think it's really important to try and immerse yourself in different aspects of veterinary medicine. So as hopefully you understand now, it's pretty diverse. So really get an understanding. So find opportunities to volunteer or shadow where you can. Maybe it will lead to some employment within those certain aspects, and you can get an understanding of, A, do I like this? Like, do I see myself doing this? And B, what aspects in particular do I like and can contribute to? And it also just diversity in general in your experience helps beef up an application to veterinary schools. And also, I mean, that being said, you already know good grades. You need to have good grades, and in order to go to vet school. Some of them require, I think, like, maybe you can correct me, the things I might have changed now, GREs or MCATs. I don't know if certain programs. So it's just kind of a gambit of stuff, but really aside from grades, like diversification of your experience, and then also having hobbies. They want to see that you know how to de-stress and focus your time elsewhere, because the demands of not only the curriculum and program, but just being a veterinarian in general, like it can be a lot. And so if you have an outlet of some sort, it's healthier that way. So just having hobbies and other things.
Yeah, that's amazing advice. Thank you for sharing that. May I ask, is there anything that you wish you knew before you went into vet school?
Yeah. So I guess I would hope that most people know, but it's not always apparent. Just because you're going to be a veterinarian, or you want to be a veterinarian, you clearly love animals and want to help animals. But it's very much a people person profession. You help animals and people through the profession, but you're doing a lot of communication with different people, whether it's the owner of the animal that you're treating at your clinic that you're working at, or with colleagues, and potentially in different environments. Some of them might be high stress, even like an emergency. So being able to be a people person effectively communicate, developing those strong interpersonal skills is really going to help you. And I do remember hearing other classmates or pre-vet people even saying like, like I want to be a veterinarian because I love animals and I don't really like people. And not to burst the bubble, but if you don't like people, I think you might find it really challenging in veterinary medicine because it is very people oriented for being an animal medical professional. So I wish I knew that a bit more, and want others to know about that. And then another thing is finances. And so veterinary medicine, the schooling is pretty costly. I'm not sure if the higher regulation organizations of vet med are going to hopefully try and reduce costs or what have you. I'm not sure, but it is quite costly for a student going to a standard veterinary school. And so just planning accordingly, trying saving up or having some sort of financial plan. You're going to expect, a lot of people expect loans. There is a big, to be honest, to be real here, a financial point about going into vet school, and a lot of debt. There amongst peers and all, like coming out of vet school, a lot of us have debt to work through. And that you can work through it, and it's fine for others. Others it takes a while to get through, and it can be stressful in addition to whatever other stressors you might be facing within your professional life. So just take note of that, and you have to really know that this is what you want to do, and accept it, and maybe like plan ahead for that, because there's a lot of there can be a lot of financial challenges in the beginning. So
Yeah, 100%. Thank you for sharing that. Those things are very helpful for people who want to be veterinarians in the future. I have one last question. What are some factors to consider when choosing pre-vet or vet schools to apply to?
And I would say doing your homework on each program, because they're not all the same. They're actually quite different. So researching or speaking with a representative of that DVM program you're considering is going to be really helpful. Asking or finding the statistics of what their graduation rate is and what their like NAVLE pass rate is. So NAVLE, many of you probably know this already, but that's the North American Veterinary Licensing Examination that we all have to take as veterinarians during the end of our vet school to actually go out and practice. And so asking about like if the program, the DVM program, has those statistics to share of like what the NAVLE pass rate is for that program, because that can also be a reflection of the quality of the academic training, of that respective institute. Whether it's AVMA accredited, that's really important, because that, again, they have to be AVMA accredited program, they have to meet certain standards and requirements that are good for students and good and generally reflect well on the program. So making sure it's AVMA accredited. And then whether just investigating the differences between a standard veterinary school programs and like private school ones. So like the ones in like the Caribbean, or Cayman Islands or Grenada and all that, that they have that schools there, but they're more, I guess you could say, privatized, and they tend to be a little more costly, but you want to make sure that the quality of the education will be similar to standard or more traditional veterinary schools, in wherever. So just kind of really look at those. And then also like abroad, are you going to stay in state? Are you going to go out of state? Are you going to go out of the country? Those all are important things to consider because those also add to the finances as well. So you're not just paying for tuition, think about your living expenses and things like that. So yeah, just important things.
Yes, thank you so much. Thank you so much for joining me today, and I appreciate you sharing all this valuable information with us. Your career journey is very inspiring, and I wish you continued success in your career.
Thank you. Yeah, thanks for having me, and feel free to ask me any other questions anytime. But happy to help. Hopefully this was helpful.
It was very helpful.